Abramovich's partners from Evraz want to protect the company from US sanctions. Steel production in the US approached the targets set by Donald Trump. ArcelorMittal has agreed with Italian trade unions to buy Ilva. FBI tries to recruit Russian oligarchs. Watch more about this in the weekly review of Metal News. The program is supported by the Tech Energoprom Group. Metallurgical enterprises of Ukraine for 8 months of 2018 increased revenues from exports of ferrous metals by 27.7% compared to the same period in 2017, brought them up to $7 billion. This is evidenced by the customs statistics of the State Fiscal Service. Thus, ferrous metals accounted for 22.65% of total revenues from exports of goods against 19.93% in the first 8 months of last year. In August, revenues from exports of ferrous metals amounted $83.263 million. At the same time, Ukraine from January to August 2018 has increased imports of similar products from 25.7% to $896.77 million. In August, this mark was $144.565 million. In addition, Ukraine in January till August 2018 has increased exports of metal products by 32%, up to $729.44 million. Metal products were delivered at $91.4 million in August. Evraz co-owners Roman Abramovich, Alexander Abramov and Alexander Frolov divided stakes in the company. Previously, they owned stakes in a metallurgical and mining company through Lanebrook Limited, which owned 62.74% of the shares. Since the 3rd of September, the share of Lanebrook Limited has been reduced to zero. Abramov's and Frolov's company, Crossland Global, became the owner of 31.37% stake in Evraz, and Abramovich's Green Lease International Holdings received 30.52%. Indirect shares of Evraz co-owners have not changed. Abramov and Frolov continue to own 20.92% and 10.45% respectively, Abramovich 30.52%, Eugen Schwidler 2.97%, Gennady Kazavoy 5.8%, Alexander Vagin 5.74%. Replacement of company's key shareholders in the Evraz registry is of a technical nature. It doesn't change the share of beneficiaries and will not affect the management of the company. Evraz spokesman stated in Vedomosti.ru. According to analysts, Abramovich decided to withdraw Evraz from the impact in the event of his entry into the US sanctions list. Lanebrook Limited owned the majority of Evraz shares before the reorganization of the ownership structure. Abramovich's share in Lanebrook Limited was, although less than 50%, but he was the largest shareholder. In this case, the application of American sanctions to Abramovich could affect the work of the Evraz itself, experts believe. The specially designated nationals have already included several large Russian businessmen, in particular the main shareholder of EN+, Oleg Deripaska, and the owner of Renova, Viktor Vekselberg. American residents do not have the right to conduct business with those who are under the sanctions. And companies and citizens from other jurisdictions themselves run the risk of getting under sanctions if they continue business with people from the new list. Sanctions can be lifted only with the approval of the US Congress. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the US Department of Justice for 2 years unsuccessfully tried to make the Russian businessman Oleg Deripaska his informant, writes the New York Times, referring to current and former officials, as well as people from the environment of the billionaire. According to the interlocutors of the publication, attempts to recruit Deripaska continued in 2014-2016. The US intelligence services wanted to receive from him information about the alleged interference of Russia in the American elections. In return, the US promised the businessman in particular to solve his problems with obtaining an American entry visa, the newspaper said. In September 2016, FBI employees without warning came to Deripaska's home in New York, writes New York Times, and began to question him about the head of the staff of Trump Field Manafort, which they reported was the link between the Republican selection campaign and the Kremlin. The attempt to flip Mr. Deripaska was part of a broader, clandestine American effort to gauge the possibility of gaining cooperation from roughly a half dozen of Russia's richest men, nearly all of whom, like Mr. Deripaska, depend on President Vladimir V. Putin to maintain their wealth, the New York Times said. Two of the players in the effort were Bruce G. Orr, the Justice Department official who has recently become a target of attacks by Mr. Trump, and Christopher Steele, the former British spy who compiled a dossier of purported links between the Trump campaign and Russia. For the reporting week, American steel production amounted to 1,870,000 tons, while the capability utilization rate was 79.8%. This level was demonstrated by a 4-year peak, which was not observed since the 26th of July 2014. The production of steel in the US was 1,759,000 tons during the same period last year, when the capability utilization rate was 75.4%. Thus, the current production figures showed an increase of 6.3% compared to the previous year and an increase of 0.6% compared to the previous week. It should be noted that the domestic steel production came close to the target set by Donald Trump. The world's largest steel company, ArcelorMittal, on the 6th of September 2018, agreed with the Italian unions on the details of the acquisition of the largest in Europe metallurgical plant Ilva in the context of preserving jobs in the enterprise. According to the Italian newspaper La Repubblica and Corriere della Sera, the negotiations between the parties began at 2 o'clock local time on the 5th of September in the Ministry of Economic Development of the country and ended in the first half of the 6th of September. In particular, ArcelorMittal again made concessions to the unions and the government of Italy, agreeing to guarantee jobs to 10,700 employees until 2020, which exceeds the original figure by 500 jobs. The remaining nearly 3,000 people are dismissed before 2023, but a special compensation fund of 250 million euros will be created for them. Recall that previously ArcelorMittal improved and agreed with the Italian authorities on the environmental part of its offer. In particular, the company committed to achieve by 2023 a reduction in CO2 emissions per ton of liquid steel to the equivalent of 15% of the level of 2017. At the same time, dust emissions will be reduced to zero by 2020, which is 18 months ahead of the deadline foreseen by Decree of December 2017. Moreover, by January 2020 and June 2020, ArcelorMittal is obliged to equip indoor warehouses for iron ore and coal, respectively. As previously reported, in June 2017, the Italian government agreed to sell the Ilva metallurgical plant to Investco, a joint venture led by ArcelorMittal. The offer of Investco provides for an investment of 2.4 billion euros, of which 1.25 billion euros will be invested in technology and 1.15 billion euros in environmental projects. The purchase price of Ilva's assets will be 1.8 billion euros, as well as an annual rent of 180 million euros. You're watching Metal News, review for the week. Indicative prices for the current positions by the end of the reporting week look like this. You have watched the weekly review of Metal News. Watch our releases, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell in order not to miss the next review.